We are surrounded and bombarded with food myths all the time. Myths about what is good to eat, what we should avoid, bad pseudoscience on nutrition. In fact, if anything has shaped the world today, at least the human experience, it's our relationship to food and the disordered relationship we have to food. How we know nothing, it seems, about our own nutrition, almost a willful ignorance, that we let our taste buds do the talking for us. And only then because we've allowed ourselves to consume things that get their hooks into us. And then we just don't stop consuming them. And then we lie to ourselves to tell us that these things are in fact essential. Today I want to go over 5 food lies and food myths we've been told, and there are many more than 5 out there. I may revisit this from time to time just as more come to mind, but so let me know in the comments at the end of this what food myths I didn't cover, what food lies we're told all the time, because we're told them all the time. It's a wonder that only 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. It's a wonder that it's not higher than that, given how pervasive the misinformation about food is in human nutrition. So we're here today to clear the air, of course, have a little fun with this concept of food lies and food myths, and help clear the air a little bit so we can begin undoing the damage that has been caused to people who put their trust in unqualified authorities when it comes to food. And I don't mean unqualified authorities being people on the internet. I mean people in positions of power with influence, because they make decisions about what you and I should eat all the time, and they do it without knowing what they're talking about. This is plainly evident, as we will go over here now with these food lies. The first food lie is that salt is bad for you. We are told to limit our salt intake. The salt is bad for us. The problem is that they are blaming health outcomes on salt that were caused by sugar. The short version is this: both high sugar diets and low salt diets lead to insulin resistance. For good health, insulin sensitivity is paramount. When you're insulin resistant, your body starts to run into serious but reversible problems. If you overconsume carbohydrates, which are what sugars are, yes, carbs are at the end of the day just sugar, what ends up causing, one of the problems you can run into is insulin resistance. And interestingly, according to one study, quote, low salt diets activate the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone sympathetic nervous system, both of which can increase insulin resistance. So how does insulin resistance lead to heart disease? So you get another interesting study that tells us this, quote, insulin resistance contributes to generate CVD via 2 independent pathways: anathema plaque formation and ventricular hypertrophy and diastolic abnormality. Both effects lead to heart failure. Insulin resistance is simply ignored in this process, which is sad because it is central to the heart disease question. Again, we're talking about salt here. People don't talk about heart disease with salt too much. This includes plaque formation in the cardiovascular system. Another study tells us, quote, insulin resistance is not simply a problem of deficient glucose uptake in response to insulin, but a multifaceted syndrome that increases significantly the risk for cardiovascular disease. The links between insulin resistance and the associated dyslipidemia, hypertension, hypercoagulability, and atherosclerosis are numerous and complex. In other words, in the salt discussion, they're oversimplifying things, which is, of course, predictable. Plus, I just want you to remind you about historic fact here. People used to walk long distances to get salt. They would put out everything they were doing. They would not tend their fields so they could get salt. In India, Gandhi helped lead his people to freedom based on a salt strike, because they wouldn't pay the tax that were being imposed on salt when people could just walk, in many cases for this, very long distances to get salt. It's essential. People know this, or at least they used to know this. Now, people avoid salt and they get bad health outcomes. The second one is that fat is bad for you. Fat's not bad for you in the slightest. Yes, some fats are, including trans fats and overconsumption of polyunsaturated fatty acids. But broadly speaking, the idea that fat is bad for you is not just a myth, but it's a misanthropic myth. Fat is satiating, more so than carbs. Study after study shows that in controlled environments, people tend to lose more weight on high-fat, low-carb diets than they do on high-carb, low-fat diets. Why? Because they have to eat less food to get satiated. It's pretty simple. And the key to that is that they have to eat to being satiated itself, which for some people requires breaking the chains of calorie counting. Not everyone can do that, myself included. I have to restrict in some ways because I can eat and eat and eat, but for many, this is what is required. Now, speaking of calories, this is the third one. The idea that all sources of food energy are equivalent. That is on its face stupid. We know the body has a different metabolic reaction at the most basic level to sugar than it does to fat, and then it does to proteins when ingested. But we also know that different kinds of proteins are received and used by the body in different ways. Our body responds differently to lactose than it does to fructose or glucose, and we know that there are fundamental differences in the various kinds of fatty acids. Plus, the use of calories as a measurement is a problem simply because of the fact that the calorie is a measurement of heat. It's a measurement you get when you light food on fire in a lab. And I don't just mean light it on fire, but total combustion. And then the energy it gives off is calorie. And that's not necessarily all that useful for understanding food and how our body utilizes it, because our digestive system is not a furnace. Now, the fourth big lie that we're told is that we need carbs. Here's the simple truth. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Even if you feel run ragged without a little bit of fruit, really that feeling means that there is something out of whack, and it can be addressed without adding in any kind of sugar or any kind of carbohydrate. There are plenty of peoples and cultures in this world where plants are eaten sparingly or even not at all, and they do just fine. There are plenty of people who've done carnivore for 25 years. Our problem is that we've been coming off of a century-long bender of sugar overconsumption. Refined sugars used to be very expensive to produce, so most people either never ate them at all or only ate them at holiday times, and that was it. They saved them for very special occasions. That's changed. The typical person on the standard Occidental or Western diet eats in a single day an amount of refined sugar that even a well-off person a few centuries ago ate in a year. Sugar has replaced animal fats and proteins in our diet, putting us functionally on the most dysfunctional form of a plant-based diet imaginable, with the predictably disastrous results. The truth is that you don't need carbs at all. Your body will produce the glucose it needs via gluconeogenesis for the biological functions that the body has that require sugars. It can do that without the need of congesting any kind of sugar, any kind of carb. Well, my fifth and favorite of all the food lies is this. If it was bad for you, then it would be illegal to sell it. You've probably encountered people who believe this, who think that pretty much anything you eat, as long as you're not eating mountains of it, are fine. According to this line of thinking, ice cream is not only nutritious, but safe, despite ice cream practically being the first example we use when talking about the Randall cycle. Look, ice cream, if you had it once a year, probably fine, but people eat it all the time. And this thinking is why we have widespread acceptance of chemical artificial sweeteners like aspartame, sucralose, and all the other nasty chemicals found in diet soft drinks and diet foods. Again, they think because it's legal, it must be good for you. Underlying this idea is that the government really is on your side, wants the best for you as the citizen. You can only get to the idea that all foods that are legal to sell are safe for human consumption based on that strange idea about government. There's one thing that does seem to unite people, regardless of their different political opinions, is that the government doesn't really know the first thing about food, agriculture, nutrition, anthropology, many things. We all tend to agree that big food has had too much influence on this part of the economy, and it shows in all the chemical concoctions sold at the grocery store as not only not food, but food for children. Just walk down the cereal aisle for the most notorious example of this, or go down the boxed dinner item aisle and look how many different variations of Hamburger Helper there are. I'll give an honorable mention here to some other food myths. These are food lies like meat being bad for us or for the environment, which is stupid, or that grains are essential and have essential minerals in them, which is also stupid, or that fruit and veggies are essential. Also stupid. We've heard these myths many times over the years. Now I want to know, what other food myths are you familiar with? So let me know some food myths that come to mind. Let me know in the comments, please. And like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help. As is sharing this on social media, that helps a lot as well. I'm the Practical Carnivore, Anthony Stine, and thanks for your time today.